Nobody would ever think that people like us would be spies.
Streaming on Peacock.
The one thing the Russians would never do is bring on a woman. Most people are not cut out for it, but these women are not most people.
That is terrifying. It's exciting. It means we're alive.
No, it means we're about to be dead.
Starring Amelia Clark and Haley Lou Richardson.
To the KGB, I'm a person of interest, but you two are PONIs.
Ponies.
Persons of no interest.
Ponies. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with a MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th. So you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store or Lowe's.com for details.
Today's episode contains sensitive topics, such as infant death and suicide. So if you are sensitive to this content, please listen at your own discretion. What is art without the muse? Many of Western art's most famous works are depictions of women. But who were these women? Do they have their own stories to share with the world? Hello and welcome to ArtMuse, a podcast that aims to reshape the ways in which we interpret well-known works of art by paying dues to the women whose images have been immortalized, but whose names and stories have been wrongfully overlooked. While these women's faces are familiar to viewers around the world, their identities have been largely forgotten. Together we will explore the important lives and legacy of the female muse and appreciate these works of art from a new perspective, through the eyes of the women whose image stares back at us. Is the muse in actuality just as, if not more, important than the artists themselves? And I'm your host, Grace Anna. She is today still considered one of the greatest performers to ever grace the stage, and her life off the stage was equally dramatic. She owned a menagerie of wild animals, including lions and alligators, had love affairs with more men than one can count on two hands, and even slept in her own coffin. She kept the world entertained as both an actress and an eccentric, and earned her place in history as one of the most iconic women of the 18th and 19th centuries. Listeners, today I introduce you to the actress, artist, author, and superstar, Sarah Bernhardt. Born in 1844 in the Latin Quarter of Paris, Sarah endured a lonely childhood. Her mother, who was only 16 years old when she had Sarah, was a popular courtesan and was too busy climbing the ranks of Paris's demi-monde to properly look after Sarah. And Sarah's father, whose identity still remains a mystery today, was equally absent from her childhood. Instead, Sarah was raised by a hired nurse in Brittany and barely saw her mother for the first few years of her life. In her memoir, Sarah writes of her longing for her mother's love and attention. Eventually, at the age of 7, Sarah was sent to school, first to a boarding school and later to a convent. But when Sarah turned 15, her life was forever changed when one of her mother's clients arranged for Sarah to enter the conservatoire to be trained as an actress. Sarah, who had no prior interest in the theater, quickly fell in love with the world of drama. After her second year at the conservatoire, she was offered the chance to join the Comédie Française, France's leading national theater. Unfortunately, her first stint at the Comédie Française did not end well. She resigned 8 months later after getting into a physical altercation with an older actress. But Sarah did not give up on her dream of becoming a star of the stage. She was soon after offered a position at the Odeon, France's second national theater, and one more geared for younger audiences. By 1869, after her performance in a play called The Passerby, Sarah had officially made a name for herself. Her success was furthered a few years later when she starred as the Queen of Spain in Victor Hugo's Ruy Blas, a performance that catapulted her into stardom. Sarah went on to have one of the most successful acting careers in all of history. She performed all over the world, including across Europe, the Americas, and Australia. She pioneered and popularized a whole new method of acting, one that centered on naturalism instead of over-dramatization. She was unafraid to defy the norm and play a number of male roles, most famously starring as Hamlet. Later in life, she owned and ran her own theater in Paris, where she directed her own productions. And she was one of the very first actresses to star in a moving picture. And Sarah was not only famous for her skills as an actress. Her extravagant personality, forward-thinking fashion style, and outrageous publicity stunts turned her into an international icon. Unafraid to live life according to her own social norms, Sarah exuberated eccentricity. She owned an ever-growing menagerie of wild animals that traveled with her and even slept in her bed. She dressed in over-the-top furs and lace hats and was on the constant search for thrill-seeking adventures, one time even taking off in an untethered hot air balloon. Despite repeatedly shocking the public, Sarah had the remarkable ability to continually outdo herself, taking each publicity stunt up a notch with her next one. On and off the stage, Sarah Bernhardt preferred to live a life full of drama. What is lesser known about Sarah Bernhardt is that she was also an established visual artist. She studied both painting and sculpture, the latter of which became her medium of choice. Several of her sculptures were admitted into the prestigious Paris Salon, and one was even given an honorable mention. Sarah also exhibited her work outside of Paris, including at the 1893 Exposition in Chicago. Her sculptures ranged from self-portraits to busts to dramatic scenes like the death of Ophelia, while some artists, like Rodin, dismissed Sarah's artistic practice as an attention-seeking hobby. Sarah herself took her art quite seriously. And the quality of her work speaks for itself. Her sculptures are filled with emotion and crafted with undeniable skill. Historians have documented at least 50 artworks made by Sarah, half of which still exist today. And her creativity did not end with visual art. Sarah also designed many of her own costumes and sets, and she was a published author with a number of popular books, including her own memoir. And while Sarah herself was an artist, many other artists clamored to capture her portrait across the mediums. In her youth, Sarah was photographed by the famed French photographer Félix Nadar, and was later painted by acclaimed portraitists Georges Clairon and Alfred Stevens. She was also the subject of a series of portraits made by the artist Alphonse Murat. In each of these portraits, Sarah's daring spirit is on full display, and they survive as visual testaments to her ravishingly good looks and larger-than-life personality. In these works, Sarah has been immortalized as the confident, gutsy, and eccentric woman she proudly was and deserves to be remembered as. Another lesser-known part of Sarah's life was her unwavering patriotism. Though she performed all over the globe, Sarah was first and foremost a proud and loyal Frenchwoman. During the Franco-Prussian War, Sarah stayed behind in war-torn Paris and converted the Odeon Theater into a hospital ward for wounded soldiers. Sarah not only rallied to get food and supplies, but even tended to the soldiers' wounds herself, witnessing the horrors of the war firsthand. And in her later age, Sarah toured America after the start of World War I, not only to perform, but to rally Americans to join France's war efforts, ending her performances with passionate and persuasive speeches. In 1915, when she had to have her right leg amputated due to years of chronic pain, Sarah made sure she was still able to perform for French troops on the front lines, carried to the Army's bases in a white sedan chair, like a queen on her throne. Sarah also did not let her amputated leg stop her from continuing her career as an actress. For many years following the operation, Sarah continued to perform around the globe. As Sarah once famously said, "There is always a way. In case of necessity, I shall have myself strapped to the scenery." And she adjusted her performances to one-act scenes where she could remain seated. Even when she eventually retired from acting, she continued to run her own theater, the Théâtre Sarah Bernhardt, directing many of the plays herself. And when she wasn't busy at her theater, Sarah offered acting classes to young students. She also dictated her reflections on acting into a book called The Art of Theater, which was published the year after her death. Though she was such an unstoppable force, Sarah Bernhardt did eventually take her final curtain call and died in 1923 of kidney failure at the age of 78. Today, Sarah Bernhardt is certainly celebrated as an important actress, as dramatic on the stage as she was off. But she equally deserves to be remembered as an artist, author, entrepreneur, visionary, and patriot. In today's episode, we share Sarah's full and complex life story, and in doing so, we hope to further honor Sarah's legacy as an independent and fearless woman who dared to live a life as large and eccentric as her greatest desires, who laughed in the face of adversity and rebelled against societal norms, and whose unique and unconventional spirit left an indelible impact on not just the history of theater, but on the history of all womankind. So with that, let's dive in to the fabulous life story of Sarah Bernhardt. Henriette Rosine Bernard, later Sarah Bernhardt, was born on October 22, 1844, in the Latin Quarter of Paris. Her mother, Judith von Hard, who went by Yule, was born in the Netherlands into a working-class Jewish family. Tragically, Yule's mother died when Yule was just a teenager, and when her father remarried, she and her sister Rosine left the Netherlands for France. We do not know much about Yule's early years in France, but surviving records show that she gave birth to twin girls at the age of 15. Sadly, both girls died in their early infancy, within just a few days of each other. Shortly afterwards, Yule and her sister made their way to Paris, where Yule found work as a seamstress. Soon after settling into the city, Yule quickly discovered that she had become pregnant again. And at the age of 16, she gave birth to another baby girl. This time, her girl would survive, and she would grow up to be Sarah Bernhardt. Yule was particularly beautiful, and now with an infant at hand, she decided to use her looks as a means of survival. Shortly after Sarah's birth, Yule became a courtesan in Paris's notorious demi-monde, the underbelly of Parisian society. Courtesans were the highest rank of sex workers, and Yule soon discovered many of the perks of her new job. She suddenly became connected to wealthy and influential men, who showered her with gifts and offered her their protection. Naturally charming, Yule quickly rose the ranks of the demi-monde and became one of the most sought-after courtesans of her day. In her heyday, her clients included Charles de Morny, Napoleon's half-brother, Baron Larrey, Napoleon's chief of medical staff, as well as many other notable politicians, generals, and bankers. While Yule's success meant that she could now financially support her and Sarah, it also meant that she had little time to take care of an infant, and Sarah hardly saw her mother in these early years. Sarah's early abandonment was one of the many hardships she faced as the daughter of a single mother. Historians today still do not know who Sarah's father was. Many suggest that he was a well-off naval officer named de Morel. Others that he was a law student who briefly lived with Yule around the time of Sarah's birth. Even in Sarah's own memoir, she never discloses her father's name. She does, however, share fantastical tales about her father, that he was as handsome as a god, and often traveled the world on business, tales that most historians have written off as imaginative reinventions, perhaps Sarah's own way of coping with her abandonment. Whoever Sarah's father was, he did not play an active role in Sarah's early life. As author Robert Gottlieb wrote, however a presence her absent father was in Sarah's psyche, Yule's actual presence, when she bothered to be present, was just as powerful. With no time to care for her daughter, Yule sent Sarah away to Brittany to be looked after by a hired nurse. With no other family members able to step in, Sarah was essentially a foster. As Sarah described in her memoir, "My mother's age was 19. I was 3 years old. My 2 aunts were 17 and 20 years of age. My grandmother was blind and my grandfather dead." And so it was in Brittany, miles away from her mother, that Sarah spent the next few years of her early life. We do not know a ton about Sarah's time in Brittany. There are no surviving letters, and Sarah herself did not seem to remember much detail from these years. We do know that Sarah's mother barely visited her, and we can imagine that the young Sarah deeply longed for her mother's love and attention. What's even more heartbreaking is that Yule's almost complete absence from Sarah's life cannot be fully explained by her busy life as a courtesan. It seemed that Yule resented Sarah from the very start. Perhaps Sarah reminded her of Sarah's father, who had clearly taken off after Sarah's birth. Whatever her reasoning, Yule's disregard of Sarah was personal. When a few years later, Yule gave birth to another baby girl, Jeanne, Yule fawned over her and showered her with attention. Clearly, Yule did not lack maternal instincts, which made her mistreatment of Sarah all the more cutting. Luckily, Sarah was born with an immense amount of determination. If her mother was not going to pay attention to her on her own, Sarah would do all she could to force her mother to be more present in her life. As described in her memoir, one day in Brittany, Sarah fell face first into a burning fireplace. It's unclear whether this was an accident or an act of rebellion, but Sarah subsequently suffered significant burns. Her injuries were severe enough that her mother was forced to come to Brittany to take care of her. As a result of the incident, her mother decided to move Sarah to Neuilly, a suburb outside of Paris, so that she could be closer to her. Still under the care of a hired nurse, Sarah was now only a few miles away from her mother. Unfortunately, the close distance did not inspire her mother to visit her any more often. We can only imagine Sarah's growing hurt and resentment towards her mother, as her mother continued to be absent from her life. But once again, Sarah took matters into her own hands. As Sarah describes in her memoir, one day by chance, she happened to see her aunt drive by in a carriage. She ran to her aunt and begged her to bring her to Paris, tired of being isolated from her family. Her aunt agreed to return for her the next day, but Sarah feared that this was nothing more than a false promise. As her aunt took off, Sarah ran and flung herself in front of her aunt's carriage, breaking her own arm. Her dramatic act and subsequent injury once again forced her mother to step in, and she finally took Sarah back to Paris to live with her. Historians today question how true this story is, and in fact how true many of the stories Sarah describes in her memoir are. It's quite possible that Sarah conjured up these imaginative tales because they were far less painful than admitting the simple truth that her mother did not seem to care very much about her. Whether Sarah really did fling herself in front of her aunt's carriage or not, it's clear that Sarah's desperation for her mother's love had hit a point of exasperation. As biographer Ruth Brandon wrote, "Certainly, it seemed likely that the central proposition of Sarah's account is true, that physically or metaphorically, she felt her mother was lost to her, and that, physically or metaphorically, she had to jump and break her bones in order to gain her attention." We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers.
Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with a MyLowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th. So you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store or Lowe's.com for details.
Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. Though she was now finally living with her mother in Paris, unfortunately, Sarah's loneliness only grew. Most of Sarah's days were spent alone playing with her dolls, under the supervision of a servant. Despite her mother's promises to spend more time with her, Sarah was continually left alone and disappointed. When Sarah turned 7, her mother eventually decided to send her to boarding school. Though this decision was in part to once again take Sarah off her hands, her mother also realized that Sarah was completely illiterate, something that shouldn't have been all that surprising, given that Sarah had never been properly tutored. And so, Sarah was once again cast off, this time to a boarding school in Auteuil. Though we can only imagine that Sarah must have been devastated to be sent away yet again, she was actually pleasantly surprised by how much she enjoyed school. For the first time in her life, she had a circle of friends and developed close bonds with many of the other girls. Her teachers treated her with kindness, and the headmaster, Madame Frassard, provided Sarah with the maternal care that she always longed for. Here at school, Sarah was taught how to read and write, as well as do basic arithmetic. It was also at school that Sarah first fell in love with the world of theater. Once a week, an actress from France's national theater, the Comédie Française, came to recite poetry to the students. Sarah was so captivated by the performances that she stayed up all night reenacting the poetic verses. When her school announced that they would put on a play called The Queen of the Fairies, Sarah excitedly jumped on the opportunity to show off her acting skills. She practiced her part day and night, and when the day of the performance arrived, she felt confident and ready. But as Sarah walked out onto the stage, she noticed her mother in the audience. Suddenly, Sarah froze with fear and forgot all of the lines she had practiced. Embarrassed by Sarah's stage fright, her mother stormed out of the theater in a fury. Sarah ran off the stage to chase after her, her eyes welling with tears. Instead of comforting Sarah, her mother whirled around and shouted, "And to think, this is a child of mine," before stomping out of the school's doors. As Sarah later reflected, why had my mother been so cruel, so cold to her daughter? I knew that another baby had been born the year before, and with a child's intuition, I hit upon the right answer. Mother loved the baby more than she loved me, if indeed she loved me at all. Sarah was so distraught over her mother's cruel treatment of her that she became severely ill, needing to spend 4 days in the infirmary to recover. As Sarah continued, "This was not the last time that my mother's chilly behavior towards me threw me into a paroxysm of misery, resulting in illness. I never grew callous to her disapproval of me. Her cutting criticisms always had the power to wound me to the heart." Despite this unfortunate episode, Sarah felt safe and at home at boarding school. So when 2 years later she heard that she was being transferred to a convent in Versailles, she was absolutely devastated. The reasoning behind the decision to transfer Sarah is unclear. In her memoir, Sarah explains that her father disapproved of her education and wanted her to have a more faith-based curriculum. But given his general absence in her life, this seems unlikely. By other accounts, her mother wanted Sarah to be in a more disciplined environment. Whatever the reasonings were, Sarah threw a hissy fit at the thought of leaving school. She hated that she was so powerless against the adults in her life and was continuously being sent away whenever she posed an inconvenience. As Sarah later described, "The idea that I was to be ordered about without any regard to my own wishes or inclinations put me into an indescribable rage." Sarah promised herself that as soon as she was old enough, she would never again let anyone else take control of her own life. Sarah was eventually dragged out of boarding school by her mother herself. She was terrified to have to start fresh at another school and worried that life at the convent would be strict and restrictive. But once again, Sarah was pleasantly surprised by how welcoming everyone was. She was especially comforted by head mother Sophie, who Sarah once described as having the sweetest and merriest face imaginable. From the start, Headmaster Sophie could feel Sarah's deep need for love and nurture, and would play a much-needed maternal role in Sarah's life. Sarah would go on to spend 6 happy years at the convent. She not only continued to improve her reading and writing, but also took lessons in art and geography. She also performed her very first successful role in a play, playing the part of Angel Raphael in a biblical dramatization. Sarah would go on to perform in many other school plays during her time there. In fact, Sarah felt so at home at the convent that at the age of 12 she officially converted to Catholicism, despite being born Jewish. But Sarah was certainly not without her mischievous moments. Sarah was known to be the ringleader amongst her fellow students, playing pranks on her teachers during lessons. Sarah also began collecting creepy crawly animals like lizards, spiders, and crickets, and even held public funerals for them when they died. In fact, Sarah was almost expelled for her unruly behavior on 3 separate occasions. But though she never faced expulsion, her days at the convent eventually came to an end when Sarah developed a serious case of pneumonia. She became so ill that her mother was forced to pick her up and take her back to Paris to recover. Sarah, who felt fully settled in her life at the convent, begged to stay, even declaring her intention to become a nun. Ultimately, no one was too convinced by her proclamations. Even Headmaster Sophie agreed that Sarah had too wild a spirit to become a woman of faith. Though she begrudgingly moved back to Paris with her mother, Sarah cherished her happy years at the convent for the rest of her life. At the age of 15, Sarah was back in Paris with no idea what her future held. Her mother refused to allow her to return to the convent and was instead grooming Sarah to be married off as soon as she was of legal age. But as the illegitimate daughter of a courtesan with Jewish roots, Sarah's mother knew that it would be a challenge to find her a suitable husband. It was also clear that Sarah was not cut out for the life of a courtesan. Not that Sarah had any interest in following in her mother's footsteps. In the meantime, Sarah's mother hired a governess to look after Sarah. Under the governess's supervision, Sarah not only continued her studies, but also enrolled in art classes. In fact, Sarah showed such natural talent as an artist that she won a prize for one of her paintings. Clearly, these early art lessons left a lasting impact on Sarah, as she would go on to continue her own artistic practice into her adulthood. But a few months later, Sarah's life was once again turned upside down. One evening, Sarah was called to the living room to join her mother and one of her clients, the Duc de Morny, who happened to be the half-brother of Napoleon and one of the most influential men in the country. Sarah knew that the purpose of the meeting was to discuss her future, and shuddered at the idea of being married off. But much to her surprise, the Duc de Morny suggested that Sarah be sent to the Conservatoire, a school for performing arts. Before Sarah could ask any questions, the Duc de Morny whisked her off to see a play at the Comédie Française. As Sarah sat in the audience, she felt as if she were watching her future unfold before her eyes. As she wrote, "When the curtain slowly rose, I thought I was going to faint. It was as if the curtain of my future life was being raised. Those columns were to be my palaces. The friezes above were to be my skies, and those boards were to bend under my frail weight. This was the debut of my artistic life." Again, historians have questioned how much of this story is true. One of Sarah's friends, Louis Verneuil, later revealed that the Duc de Morny only suggested that Sarah be sent to the Conservatoire to get her off her mother's hands. It is once again possible that Sarah created another fantastical tale to mask the painful reality of her mother's continued disregard for her. Whatever the exact circumstances around the decision to send Sarah to the Conservatoire were, Sarah quickly warmed to the idea. She excitedly began leafing through her school books for famous tragedies and acted out all the different parts in her room. A month later, the Duc de Morny took Sarah to the Conservatoire to audition, and out of over 200 candidates, Sarah was one of only 20 to be accepted. Although the judges may have been impressed with Sarah's acting skills, it's far more likely that the Duc de Morny pulled strings to get Sarah in. As the half-brother to the emperor, the Duc de Morny was not short of influential connections. As author Robert Gottlieb described, no one in France would have considered offending the emperor's brother by ignoring such a recommendation. From the moment Morny came up with the idea of Sarah becoming an actress, her acceptance by the Conservatoire was a certainty. However Sarah managed to be accepted, she was absolutely thrilled to join the Conservatoire. She began training right away, taught by some of the biggest actors of her day, such as Jean-Baptiste Provost and Renier. Sarah not only learned various different acting methods, but had to completely retrain her way of speech. As Sarah described, "I had considerable difficulties to overcome. I inherited from my mother a serious defect in pronunciation, speaking with clenched teeth. To cure me of the habit, the conservatoire teachers gave me little rubber balls, which prevented me from closing my mouth." But as time went on and with continued training, Sarah became more and more confident in her ability as an actress. She recognized within herself a rare and special talent and began dreaming of the big stage. Though she was still so young, Sarah convinced herself that with enough hard work, she could become one of Paris's leading actresses. Little did Sarah know that she would one day become the greatest actress the world had ever seen. We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers.
Revitalize your bathroom with big savings at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select vanities and free delivery during our bath savings event. Plus, get up to 40% off select shower heads. No matter what style you're looking for, we've got you covered. Shop for your bathroom refresh at Lowe's. We help, you save. While supplies last, selection varies by location.
Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. After 2 years at the Conservatoire, Sarah was offered a position at the Comédie Française, France's leading national theater. Again, this offer was likely orchestrated by the Duc de Morny, who continued to support Sarah's early acting career. Because she was still considered a minor, Sarah's mother had to sign her contract on her behalf, and Sarah was only given a lowly beginner's salary. But Sarah couldn't care less about the money. This was her big chance to make a splash in the theater world, and she would do all she could to make a name for herself. New actors at the Comédie Française were given 3 debuts to showcase their skills to the public. If audiences responded well to them, they were given a promotion within the company. If these initial performances were not as successful, their careers might be over. Unfortunately, Sarah fell in this later camp, and her high hopes of stardom were quickly crushed. Her first performance took place in September of 1862. Despite all of her training, just before Sarah went on stage, she suffered severe stage fright. Though she managed to get through the play, she gave far from a standout performance. Unfortunately, her second performance went equally unnoticed, and her third and final performance received scathing reviews. One particularly cutting review read, "This performance was a very poor business. That Mademoiselle Bernhardt should be insignificant doesn't really matter very much. Among the number presented to us every year, it's only natural that some should be failures." When Sarah's mother learned of Sarah's poorly received performances, she jumped on the opportunity to further humiliate her, screaming, "See, the whole world calls you stupid, and the whole world knows you're my child." Sarah was so mortified that she attempted to take her own life, swallowing a large dose of poison. Though she teetered on the brink of death, fortunately, she miraculously recovered a few days later. As Sarah wrote of her emotional state, "Life was useless. I wanted to see what death was like." And sadly, Sarah's situation only continued to go downhill. When she returned to the Comédie Française after her recovery, the company was preparing its annual celebration in honor of the great French playwright Molière. Each year on Molière's birthday, the Comédie Française put on a special tribute performance. Sarah invited one of her younger sisters, Regine, to watch from backstage. Sarah felt a special kinship with Regine, who was equally rejected and neglected by their mother, and Sarah wanted to give Regine a night of fun. Unfortunately, the night turned out to be anything but fun. While backstage, Regine accidentally stepped on the back of the dress of the Comédie Française's biggest actress, Mademoiselle Natalie. When Mademoiselle Natalie realized what had happened, she quickly whirled around and shoved Regine into a marble pillar. Regine immediately started crying as blood gushed from her forehead. Coming to her defense, Sarah swooped in and slapped Mademoiselle Natalie across her cheek, while the entire ensemble stood in shock. The following morning, Sarah was summoned to management's office, who asked her to immediately apologize to Mademoiselle Natalie, threatening that if she refused, she would be let go of the company. Sarah could not believe that she was the one being asked to apologize. Sarah would only agree on the condition that Mademoiselle Natalie apologized to her sister first. When management told Sarah that that would not be possible, Sarah quit on the spot. Though she had dreams of becoming a successful actress, she would not compromise her own dignity in the process. And so, in March of 1863, after 8 unremarkable months, Sarah left the Comédie Française and would not return for another decade. Sarah's mother could not believe that she had so carelessly walked away from the most prestigious theater in all of Paris. For days, Sarah endured her mother's incessant insults. But though Sarah's time at the Comédie Française did not further her acting career, the drama surrounding her exit did raise eyebrows around Paris. As author Robert Gottlieb wrote, "But if she had lost her job, she had overnight become the object of excited notoriety in the Paris theater world, transformed from a nobody into a scandalous topic of conversation and speculation. It was the first publicity coup of her career, the first of many." Almost immediately after quitting the Comédie Française, Sarah was offered a position at the Gymnase, a new and fashionable theater that specialized in comedy. Sarah was thrilled to be given a second chance and accepted the job on the spot. Though she was only offered small roles or cast as the understudy for leading actors, Sarah was grateful for the opportunity to continue to develop her craft. She was also grateful that the money she made at the Gymnase, coupled with some money she received from her grandmother, allowed her to finally move out of her mother's house. Stuck living under her mother's roof for the past many years, Sarah was victim to constant verbal harassment and ridicule. As Sarah once described of her mother, "She was very determined, and this determination of hers sometimes resulted in the most violent anger. She would turn very pale, and violet rings would appear around her eyes. Her lips would tremble. Her teeth clattered. Her eyes took on a fixed gaze. The words would sputter from her throat, all chopped up, hissing and hoarse." Her mother also continued to try to marry Sarah off, at times even offering Sarah's hand in marriage to her own clients. As Sarah complained, "My mother isn't married herself, yet she wants me to be a wife." Sarah made a promise to herself that if she ever were to marry, she would only marry for love. Now free from her mother's wrath, Sarah was able to enjoy autonomy for the first time in her life. We get a sense of Sarah's new freedom in a series of photographs taken of her around this time by the famed photographer Félix Nadar. We are not sure how Sarah first became connected to Nadar, but she was photographed by him in 1864, when Sarah was 20 years old. In these photographs, Sarah exudes both confidence and beauty. She is wrapped in a velvet drape, which seductively slips off her shoulders. Her hair, curly and untamed, bursts with energy, a reflection of Sarah's own inner wildness. Though the photographs are in black and white, Sarah's eyes still manage to sparkle and lure the viewer in with their mysterious pull. In one photograph, Sarah leans her shoulder on a table, calm, cool, and collected, daring us to move closer. These photographs certainly showcase Sarah's alluring looks and bold personality, present even at such a young age and before her career really took off. There is also a surviving nude photograph of Sarah taken in the same period by an anonymous photographer, suggesting that Sarah may have posed as an artist model for extra money during this time. Here, Sarah is once again confident and enigmatic, flirtatiously holding a fan in front of her face. Sarah teases and taunts the viewer to approach her. We can almost hear her seductive voice calling our name as she waves her fan coquettishly. Once again, her curly and buoyant hair pokes through, a testament to Sarah's refusal to conform to societal beauty standards. Here, her womanly body is on full show, and Sarah is unafraid to flaunt it in front of the camera, something that she would do many times again throughout her life. It was also around this time that Sarah began an affair with the Belgian Prince de Ligny. There are various stories surrounding how Sarah and the prince first met. By some accounts, the prince spotted Sarah performing at the Gymnase Theater. By other accounts, they met at a masked ball. However the two met, they soon after began a steamy and passionate affair. Sarah, who was still a relatively unknown actress at the time, must have been pinching herself that she had managed to find a royal lover. For the Prince de Ligny was certainly a catch. Young and charming and with impressive connections, the prince was Sarah's ticket to Parisian high society. But this did not mean Sarah did not develop true feelings for the prince. She later described him as her first real love, feelings that seemed to be mutual. In her memoir, Sarah shared that the prince even asked for her hand in marriage. But sadly, Sarah would not have her fairy tale ending. According to her memoir, Sarah turned down the prince's marriage proposal, knowing that his family would not approve of her. She was willing to sacrifice her own happiness to avoid his public humiliation. But once again, this seems to be one of Sarah's fictionalized stories to mask a far more sinister reality. Shortly after the start of their affair, Sarah discovered that she was pregnant. When Sarah told the prince that she was with child, he coldly cut things off with her, sending her 50 francs with a note reading, "I know a woman named Bernhardt, but I do not know her child." Sarah understood then that the prince would have nothing to do with her or their child, and that she was on her own. Fortunately, on December 22nd of 1864, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she named Maurice. As she looked into her baby's eyes, Sarah promised that she would be as doting and devoted to him as possible. She would never make him feel forgotten, or worse, like a burden, like her own mother had made her feel throughout her whole life. As a friend of Sarah wrote of Sarah's devotion to her son, "Every aim of Sarah's existence was to provide for him while he was young, the shield of respectability she herself had never known." Sadly, Sarah knew that without the prince's backing, she did not make enough on her own to properly support her and her newborn son. She would need to quickly come up with a way to make more money. Not unlike her own mother when Sarah was born, Sarah decided to turn to sex work. Though it pained her to follow in her mother's footsteps, she had little choice but to use her good looks as a means of survival. But never one to follow the norm, Sarah was far from a typical courtesan. Instead, she created a salon for men to gather in her apartment, just as much for community as for sexual pleasure. As author Catherine Reef wrote, "In the white satin salon of her apartment, Sarah managed to establish a kind of court, made up of a group of distinguished men who paid her joint homage while sharing her favors openly and with equanimity." Sarah's sex salon included 8 men in total, all prominent men in their own ways. There was an Egyptian diplomat, 2 famous journalists, an important member of Napoleon's regime, and a Spanish vicomte, among others. And what might have started as a sex group quickly turned into a community of friends, who would just as happily gather to converse with one another as they were to satiate their sexual desires. Even Sarah herself was taken aback at how close the group of men had become. As Sarah commented, "What's odd is how well they get along. They never quarrel, and they seem to adore one another. I sometimes think that if I were to disappear, my menagerie would go on congregating in my apartment with the greatest pleasure." Yet despite how swimmingly Sarah's menagerie of men got along, Sarah eventually grew restless and began yearning to get back on the stage. She still had never given up on her dreams of one day becoming one of Paris's leading actresses. And as luck would have it, Sarah's golden ticket to stardom was right around the corner. In the spring of 1866, Sarah was introduced to Félix Duquesnel, the new manager of the Odeon, France's second-largest national theater. Duquesnel was looking for fresh talent to add to his roster and breathe new life into the theater. And within just moments of meeting Sarah, Duquesnel knew his prayers had been answered. We actually have Duquesnel's first-hand account of meeting Sarah, a testament to her ability to charm at first sight. As Duquesnel wrote, "There stood the most adorable creature imaginable, Sarah Bernhardt, in all the glory of her youth. She wasn't just pretty, she was more dangerous than that. Our interview was very quick. We understood each other immediately. I felt that I was face to face with a marvelously gifted creature of rare intelligence and limitless energy and willpower, hidden behind her delicate appearance. She was everything that was entrancing and seductive as a woman. Artistry emanated from her entire being. All she needed was to be started off in the right direction and to be exposed to the public." Unsurprisingly, Sarah was offered a contract with the Odeon shortly after her interview. In many ways, her meeting with Duquesnel felt written in the stars. Sarah was hungry for fame and recognition, and Duquesnel was looking for his next star to bring the Odeon to the forefront of Parisian culture. But once again, Sarah's success at the Odeon was not immediate. It took about a year of relatively unremarkable performances for Sarah to have her breakout moment. Finally, in the early months of 1868, Sarah caught the audience's attention with her performance as Zacharie in Racine's Athalie. As Sarah recalled of this initial success, "The first performance was a veritable small triumph for me. Oh, quite a small one, but still full of promise for my future. The public, charmed with the sweetness of my voice, encored the spoken choruses, and I was rewarded by 3 bursts of applause." She gained even more recognition when she performed the part of Anna Danby in Alexandre Dumas' Kean that February. Because of its unconventional programming, the Odeon was particularly popular with young people, especially students of the left bank. not before long, Sarah became an idol amongst these younger groups, who began calling themselves Sarah Doters. Though she wasn't yet a household name, Sarah had officially gotten her first taste of success. And the following year, Sarah would perform the role that would catapult her into full-fledged stardom. In 1869, Sarah was offered a part in Francois Coppi's two-character play, The Passerby, about a young lord who, while disguised as a peasant, falls in love with an actress. Sarah was cast as Zanetto, the young lord, the first of many male roles she would play throughout her career. The role of the actress was played by Madame Agar, an older and well-respected theater performer. The Passerby was an instant triumph, and Sarah in particular stood out as the star of the performance. As Catherine Reef wrote, Sarah shone in this simple play. She was sprightly and charming, and her voice was as clear as a chime. The Passerby turned Sarah into an overnight sensation, and she quickly became the talk of the town. The public clamored to the Odeon to see her perform. In fact, there was such high demand that the Odeon scheduled an unprecedented 150 performances. Sarah continued to find success at the Odeon over the course of the next few years, and her stardom skyrocketed with each passing season. As author Robert Gottlieb wrote, "It was at the Odeon that Sarah came into her own, revealing for the first time her enormous talent and conquering both the critics and the public." After years of failure, Sarah had finally become the star she had always believed she could be. And with her newfound celebrity came many perks and life upgrades. Now making top dollar, Sarah moved her and Maurice into a lavish 7-room apartment in the heart of Paris. She was also able to afford a full household staff, including a maid and a cook, and she had enough space to bring in new pets, 2 large dogs and turtles, who she allowed to roam the apartment freely. But while Sarah was feeling on top of the world, her popularity and notoriety growing at a rapid rate, France was on the brink of war, and life as she knew it would come to a halting stop. In the summer of 1870, while Sarah was vacationing in the south of France, she heard the shocking news that France had declared war on Germany, a war that would later be referred to as the Franco-Prussian War. Instead of fleeing for safety, Sarah immediately rushed back to Paris to offer her help in the war efforts. She wasn't afraid to be in the heart of the action, and she wanted to do all she could to stand with her country. But first, Sarah needed to make sure her son and family were protected from harm. As soon as Sarah arrived in Paris, she arranged for Maurice, her sisters, and mother to travel to Holland, where they could wait out the war in safety. With her family out of danger's way, Sarah could now fully devote herself to aiding the war. Because authorities ordered all theaters to close down at the start of the war, Sarah petitioned for the Odeon to be turned into a hospital for wounded soldiers. As Sarah wrote, "I decided to use my strength and intelligence in tending the wounded." After she received permission from the government to use the Odeon as a makeshift hospital, Sarah cleared the theater's stage, seats, dressing rooms, and lobby to make space for hospital beds and cots. She called upon her wealthy friends to donate supplies and brought in her own personal chef to prepare food for the soldiers. She even accepted a coop of 50 hens, which she kept in her apartment to ration eggs. And Sarah did more than just prepare accommodations. She herself worked as a nurse, bathing soldiers, giving them their medicine, dressing their wounds, and even assisting surgeons with operations and amputations. To cheer recovering soldiers up, Sarah gave them private performances and signed autographs for them as souvenirs. As the days went on, it was clear that the hospital was in high demand, and as many as 50 to 100 wounded soldiers arrived on a daily basis. Sarah often worked through many sleepless nights, doing all she could to keep the hospital running. As author Robert Gottlieb eloquently wrote, she herself was exhausted, barely a skeleton, but she had done something big and everyone knew it. She had conceived a plan and executed it with formidable concentration, reaching out to her entire world of the rich and the powerful, and organizing it to help her achieve her goal. She had given herself with unflagging energy, and she had shown herself and everyone else what she was capable of. There is no denying that Sarah showed an immense amount of bravery, as tending to the wounded was not for the weak-hearted. In the months that she ran the hospital, Sarah witnessed the horrors of warfare firsthand. In her memoir, she described one particularly grueling evening when she came across a pile of soldiers' bodies, all presumably dead. But before she walked away, she heard the haunting screams of one of the men, who was still clinging on to life. As Sarah described, I raised my lantern to look at his face and found that his ear and part of his jaw had been blown off. Great clots of blood, coagulated by the cold, hung from his lower jaw. We can only imagine the gory scenes that Sarah was exposed to on a daily basis, and her continued commitment to the war effort is a testament not only to her unwavering resilience, but to her immense patriotism and deep love for her country and its men. By January of 1871, it was clear that France had lost the war, and the German army began narrowing in on Paris. By the end of the month, the entire city was bombarded with cannon shots. Sarah did her best to keep her patients safe, moving as many wounded soldiers as she could to the Odeon cellar. But her makeshift hospital was eventually forced to shut down. Shortly after, France had no choice but to concede to the German army, and the Franco-Prussian War was officially over. As soon as France signed the peace agreement, Sarah tried to track down her family in Holland, only to learn that they had actually ridden out the war in Hamburg, in the heart of enemy territory. Sarah was appalled and received special permission to travel to Germany to drag her son back to Paris herself. Despite France's defeat, Sarah was awarded a gold medal for her valiant war efforts. She was now not only a respected actress, but a war hero amongst her people. As author Robert Gottlieb wrote, while the war was disastrous for France, it had an extraordinary side effect of turning Sarah into an offstage heroine, the first step in her unlikely transformation from headstrong girl with dubious morals into a national icon. With the end of the war came the slow return to normalcy, including the reopening of France's national theaters. Though deeply traumatized by what she had just witnessed and saddened over France's loss, Sarah knew that she owed it to both her country and herself to return to the stage. But what she would not have known was that on the horizon was fame and fortune beyond her wildest imagination, and that she would skyrocket into a level of stardom that the world had never before seen. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of our 2-part episode on Sarah Bernhardt. We will continue Sarah's story and honor her immense legacy in part 2 of this episode. I have included images, resources, and suggestions for further reading on the ArtMuse website and Instagram. ArtMuse is produced by Kula Production Company. Today's episode was written by me, your host, Grace Anna. Stay tuned as I continue to share the stories of the women behind some of the world's most important works of art. Until next time, bye for now.